I knew everybody felt as guilty as I did, especially Mom. Mom was all Grandpa had left. So even after she married my dad, who's a white man and teaches in the college in our city, and after Cheryl and I were born, Mom made sure that every summer we spent a week with Grandpa. I never thought that Grandpa would be lonely after our visits, and none of us noticed how old and weak he had become. But Grandpa knew, and so he came to us. He had ridden on buses for 2.5 days. When he arrived in the city, tired and stiff from sitting for so long, he set out, walking to find us. He had stopped to rest on the steps of some building downtown, and a policeman found him. The cop, according to Grandpa, was a good man, who took him to the bus stop and waited until the bus came and told the driver to let Grandpa out at Bellevue Drive. After Grandpa got off the bus, he started walking again. But he couldn't see the house numbers on the other side when he walked down the sidewalk, so he walked in the middle of the street. That's when all the little kids and dogs followed him. I knew everybody felt as bad as I did. Yet, I was proud of this 86-year-old man who had never been away from the reservation, having the courage to travel so far alone. "You found the money in my boots?" he asked Mom. "Martin did," she answered, and roused herself to scold. "Grandpa, you shouldn't have carried so much money. What if someone had stolen it from you?" Grandpa laughed. "I would have known if anyone tried to take the boots off my feet. The money is what I've saved for a long time, $100 for my funeral. But you take it now to buy groceries, so I won't be a burden to you while I am here." "That won't be necessary, Grandpa," Dad said. "We are honored to have you with us, and you will never be a burden. I am only sorry that we never thought to bring you home with us this summer and spare you the discomfort of a long trip." Grandpa was pleased. "Thank you," he answered. "But do not feel bad that you didn't bring me with you, for I would not have come then. It was not time." He said this in such a way that no one could argue with him. To Grandpa and the Sioux, he once told me, a thing would be done when it was the right time to do it. And that's the way it was. "Also," Grandpa went on, looking at me, "I have come because it is soon time for Martin to have the medicine bag." We all knew what that meant. Grandpa thought he was going to die, and he had to follow the tradition of his family to pass the medicine bag, along with its history, to the oldest male child. "Even though the boy," he said, still looking at me, "bears a white man's name, the medicine bag will be his." I didn't know what to say. I had the same hot and cold feeling that I had had when I first saw Grandpa in the street. The medicine bag was the dirty leather pouch I had found around his neck. I could never wear such a thing, I almost said aloud. I thought of my friends, seeing it in my gym class, at the swimming pool, and could imagine the smart things they would say. But I just swallowed hard and took a step toward the bed. I knew I would have to take it. But Grandpa was tired. "Not now, Martin," he said, waving his hand in dismissal. "It's not time. Now I will sleep." So that's how Grandpa came to be with us for 2 months. My friends kept asking to come see the old man, but I put them off. I told myself that I didn't want them laughing at Grandpa. But even as I made excuses, I knew it wasn't Grandpa that I was afraid they'd laugh at. Nothing bothered Cheryl about bringing her friends to see Grandpa. Every day after school started, there'd be a crew of giggling little girls or round-eyed little boys crowded around the old man on the patio, where he'd gotten in the habit of sitting every afternoon. Grandpa would smile in his gentle way and patiently answer their questions, or he'd tell them stories of brave warriors, ghosts, animals, and the kids listened in awed silence. Those little guys thought Grandpa was great. Finally, one day after school, my friends came home with me because nothing I had said stopped them. "We're going to see the great Indian of Bellevue Drive," said Hank, who was supposed to be my best friend. "My brother has seen him 3 times, so he ought to be well enough to see us." When we got to my house, Grandpa was sitting on the patio. He had on his red shirt, but today he also wore a fringed leather vest that was decorated with beads. Instead of his usual cowboy boots, he had solidly beaded moccasins on his feet that stuck out of his black trousers. Of course, he had his old black hat on. He was seldom without it, but it had been brushed, and the feather in the beaded headband was proudly erect, its tip a brighter white. His hair lay in silver strands over the red shirt collar. I stared just as my friends did, and I heard one of them murmur, "Wow!" Grandpa looked up, and when his eyes met mine, they twinkled as if he were laughing inside. He nodded to me, and my face got all hot. I could tell that he had known all along I was afraid he'd embarrass me in front of my friends. "How hoxilas, boys," he greeted, and held out his hand. My buddies passed in a single file and shook his hand as I introduced them. They were so polite, I almost laughed. "How there, Grandpa," and even a "How do you do, sir?" "You look fine, Grandpa," I said, as the guys sat on the lawn chairs or on the patio floor. "Hon, yes," he agreed. When I woke up this morning, it seemed the right time to dress in the good clothes. I knew that my grandson would be bringing his friends. "You guys want some lemonade or something?" I offered. No one answered. They were listening to Grandpa as he started telling how he'd killed the deer from which his vest was made. Grandpa did most of the talking while my friends were there. I was so proud of him and amazed at how respectfully quiet my buddies were. Mom had to chase them home at supper time. As they left, they shook Grandpa's hand again and said to me, "Martin, he's really great." "Yeah, man, don't blame you for keeping him to yourself. Can we come back?" But after they left, Mom said, "No more visitors for a while, Martin. Grandpa won't admit it, but his strength hasn't returned. He likes company, but it tires him."